fine. I just switched it on. Is it on or off now?
Tap on it. Okay.
Which one is on? Is that
On is all the way up.
there?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. That's it?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I'm Cindy Bernard. I'm an artist. I'm the co-founder of Indian Cove Neighbors and the editor of the Desert Trumpet, which is a citizen engagement and government accountability substack that serves 29 Palms and the Morongo Basin. And I'm going to be your moderator today. Before I continue any further, a big thanks to everyone at the 29 Palms Parks and Rec for allowing us to use this great space. This is gifted to us as a nonprofit, or actually through the MBCA, so we really appreciate the ability to use the gym. This is the first town hall that Indian Cove Neighbors has organized. Thanks to our organizing committee for all of their hard work, Heidi Hurd, Rich Good, and Kat and John Talley-Jones. The Morongo Basin Conservation Association are our collaborators on this event, and we really want to thank everybody for helping out, especially Steve Bardwell, who unfortunately became ill and can't be with us today. Fun fact, the MBCA was actually founded by Susan Lucky Riley, who lived in one of the first houses in Indian Cove on the border of what is now Joshua Tree National Park. And I can actually see her house from my office window when I work. If you don't have one of the programs, there's still several on the back table, and if you put up your hand, they will be brought to you. The program is going to give you a rough idea of what's going on today and what you can expect.
When we tested it, it was nice.
Just want a couple of housekeeping things. The restrooms are through the double doors in the back. No worries, they won't lock behind you. You will be able to get back in. And the emergency exits are the 4 doors, the 4 corners of this space. And you should also be able to exit out the sliding doors as well, in case for some reason you need to leave. Quick introduction of our speakers and some of our replacement speakers. Luke Basalto also had a family emergency, so Kat Talley-Jones will be taking his place today. And as I just said, Steve Bardwell unfortunately had a family illness, so we have Pat Flanagan and Lorraine Turk, both board members of the MBCA, who will be speaking in place of Steve, and Rich Good as himself. As I said, I'll be your moderator. So essentially the way this is going to work out is each of the speakers will speak for approximately 10 minutes, and then we'll be opening it up for group discussion. We have 2 mic runners, Bob and Tonya. So if you need to speak, we are recording, so please raise your hand and wait for the mic to come to you. That will really help us in getting an accurate recording of the event. And then perhaps there might be some closing remarks. So that's the run time of what we're into today. Please be considerate of everybody in the room and limit your comments to between 3 and 5 minutes. I'm not going to do a hard cutoff, but we do want everybody to have the opportunity to participate that wants to participate. Personal attacks and foul language are of course not permitted. Try, just be polite. We're all in a community here, and we all want to be friendly to each other. As I said before, this forum is being recorded and photographed, so participation in the forum is your permission to have your images reproduced, your voice reproduced in the press and on YouTube and wherever else this might be distributed. We're here to talk about how we balance 2 needs that are in tension with each other: economic development and environmental preservation. And if you look at the back of your program, you'll see a copy of the current 29 Palms General Plan Guiding Principles, which is a good example of the types of guidelines that general plans try to fulfill. While you're looking at those, I'm actually going to read off the Yucca Valley version, which gives you a second example of what city guidelines are. So these are the 29 Palms General Plan Principles were from about 2012, and these are 2014. So they were written at approximately the same time. While maintaining our small town atmosphere, the town of Yucca Valley is a unique, desirable place to live, the economic hub of the Morongo Basin, and a sought-after place to visit. As a destination, visitors are drawn to our desert environment, arts and culture, recreation, history, night skies, active open space, and shopping and hospitality opportunities. Our range of community services and facilities, efficient infrastructure, safe and established neighborhoods, sorry, my voice is changing as I'm speaking. Our range of community services and facilities, efficient infrastructure, safe and established neighborhoods, unique character, and diversity define our community and our quality of life. Our commitment to balanced growth, environmental stewardship, fiscal sustainability, active citizen participation, and property rights are the cornerstones of our community. So that gives you two ideas of the kinds of tensions that are even laid out in a general plan between what sometimes feel like opposing pressures on a community. And with that, we will start with Kat Talley-Jones.
Hi, am I audible?
Not yet.
Not yet. Turned me up yet.
Okay, go.
Okay, I'm going to stand up. Kat Talley-Jones. I was drafted half an hour ago to fill in for Luke Basulto. So I have his talking points, and hopefully I will deliver value for your time here. So we wanted to talk about our shared values. We all live here in the Morongo Basin because we value the land, the space, the quiet, and the wild beauty that still exists here. We're not against growth, but we want growth that respects what's already here and what's already working. The desert is not empty, it's active and alive. City officials have spoken about activating the desert, but from an ecological and community standpoint, much of that land is already activated. It's home to desert tortoises, and I can say that with great authority because we have one that's decided to hang out behind our house for the last week, and so I get to watch the everyday, not doing very much of a California desert tortoise. Waking up, eating a little grass, sitting in the sun, sitting in the shade, snoozing, which I think is something we all aspire to. So it's home, the desert's home to desert tortoises, kit foxes, migratory birds, native plants, and pollinators. It's also a key part of the system that connects to Joshua Tree National Park. These open lands serve a purpose as breathing room, as corridors for wildlife, and as part of the Mojave's ability to adapt to heat, drought, and long-term climate shifts. You probably will hear this term a lot in the next half hour, wildlife corridors, why they matter here. Morongo Basin is a critical ecological bridge between Joshua Tree National Park and wildlands stretching into the Mojave Preserve and BLM managed lands. One way I sort of think of it is that here in 29 Palms at least, we're between two big wildlife preserves, one which is Joshua Tree National Park, and the other is the base. A lot of that land is not used except to blow things up from time to time. And so it's really a place where wildlife still lives as it has for millennia. Wildlife needs to move, especially species like the tortoise, whose population is already declining due to habitat loss. It was shocking to me when the tortoise was declared endangered last year to look at the population estimates of the tortoise, which went down almost 50% in the last 10 to 15 years, which is crazy. And I talked to a tortoise biologist. I said, well, what's next for the tortoise? And he said, extinction, which would leave the landscape and us all a lot poorer. Fragmenting that movement, especially in areas just outside park boundaries, means cutting the park off from the wider landscape that supports it. Then development, the risk of unchecked sprawl. Many of the planned developments being dusted off were created before we understood how desert ecosystems work. Activating these plans without reconsideration puts us at risk at fragmenting wildlife corridors, disrupting aquifers and water recharge, creating visual and noise pollution that undermines our rural quality of life. We also risk damaging the tourism economy by changing the character of the land that draws people here. Joshua Tree National Park depends on the Morongo Basin. The health of Joshua Tree National Park is deeply connected to the health of the surrounding communities. Wildlife doesn't stop at the park boundary. Our tortoise is a case in point. She walks between our house and into the park and back and roams around. And I'm sure the male tortoises have even much, much bigger ranges that they travel. As a gateway city, 29 Palms plays a key role in protecting the park's integrity for the millions of visitors who come here each year and for future generations. And 29, of course, is not the only gateway city. Joshua Tree is, Yucca is, Morongo Valley is. So we're all living in gateway cities. What the community can do: demand smart planning, reevaluated outdated development plans through a modern ecological lens, support infill development and adaptive reuse rather than new construction in intact habitat, advocate for wildlife corridor protections and general plans and zoning updates, show up to planning commission meetings and city council hearings. Your voice matters more than a developer's consultant. Vision for the future: we're not against change, we're for intentional change that keeps the spirit of this place alive. Morongo Basin has a chance to lead by example, to show how rural desert communities can grow in a way that protects wildlife, water, and community character. This is about more than land use. It's about our identity, our responsibility, and our relationship to this landscape. So let's remind city leadership that undeveloped doesn't mean unused, and empty doesn't mean unimportant. The desert has been here long before any of us, and if we listen to it and to each other, it can continue to support us all. And that's Luke's notes. So thank you. And I wanted to ask Gary Hun from the MDLT. There you are. Yes, please. You have some good news, I think.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I know I'm not on the agenda. Steve asked if I would come today and just share a little bit of news with you. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Gary Hund, and I'm on the board of Mojave Desert Land Trust. I was their former executive director, but retired from full-time work in fall of 2021. I'm a career conservationist, wildlife biologist, and ecologist. And I'm working on a special project for Mojave Desert Land Trust right now, which is to advocate for and hopefully successfully have 2 wildlife overcrossings built over Highway 62 between Coachella Valley and Yucca Valley. These were both identified in a study that was done that was completed in 2021. It was a wildlife connectivity study that was commissioned by Caltrans because many of you may know a number of different species of wildlife have been struck and killed on Highway 62 in that area. And Highway 62, it goes up through Dry Morongo Wash and through Morongo Valley and then up the Yucca Grade to Yucca Valley. And that section of Highway 62 bisects the San Bernardino Mountains and the Little San Bernardino Mountains. It literally bisects the 2 mountain ranges. And as such, it's now, because of all the traffic and the concrete barriers that have been put in on the Yucca and Morongo Grade, those areas are almost a complete barrier to wildlife movement. We've documented wildlife on both sides of the highway, and they're just not attempting to cross anymore for the most part. That's really critical. Conservationists have done a lot of work over the past few decades in this area through legislation, federal legislation, to get more wilderness areas designated, to provide, to upgrade Joshua Tree National Monument to a national park back in 1994. Recently, the designation of the Chuckwalla National Monument south of Joshua Tree took land that was public land but had no permanent protection and gave it permanent protection. So a lot of work like that has been done. Mojave Desert Land Trust and other organizations are working to purchase large areas to protect them, particularly in habitat linkages between the base and Joshua Tree National Park, and also to preserve our quality of life and our gateway to the national park. Organizations like Morongo Basin Conservation Association have worked very hard to make sure that development is wise development that's consistent with the general plans. And so a lot of work has been done, and that's all well and good. Also, a lot of active natural resource management is taking place to address things like exotic species. But if we don't keep our large protected lands connected to one another, Sand and Snow National Monument to Joshua Tree National Park, and of course that means also to the San Gorgonio Wilderness and the San Bernardino National Forest, and then Joshua Tree down to Chuckwalla, and ultimately going through that location is a desert leg, if you will, of connectivity all the way from Mexico to Canada. That's an important connection. It's also a very important linkage for wildlife to be able to respond to climate change, because you have desert lands that are, going all the way out into the low desert that are less than 1,000 feet in elevation, connectivity all the way up to San Gorgonio Peak, which is over 11,500 feet. So as the Mojave is getting hotter, it provides wildlife an opportunity to shift their range northward. So this study, because of the two areas, the Yucca Grade and the Morongo Grade, that have those concrete barriers, recommended that 2 wildlife overpasses be constructed. Caltrans reached out to us and asked us if we would want to partner with them in an effort to make that happen. So on April 18th, I submitted a pre-application for a planning grant for the 2 crossings. And I just received news, we just received news about a week and a half ago, an invitation to prepare a full grant application for a planning grant. And that will be, bring both of those wildlife crossings, if we're able to get the grant, up to 65% project completion, meaning the next step after that would be construction. Now this is a long process. If we, thank you. If we get the grant, and I'm going to say when because I'm a very determined person, but if we get the grant, then it will take 3 to 4 years to get through the planning, and then 2 to 3 more years after that for construction on average. So we're going to try to make it as fast as we can if we get that grant. We're going to work very hard to make it happen. And we're talking with the Coachella Valley Mountains Conservancy and the Mojave Resource Conservation District and others, because we need a local agency to partner with, because Caltrans will only enter into cooperative agreements to do this work with a governmental entity. We can get the grant and we can distribute the money to scientists and to project managers like me and to the local agency for their role, but we need to partner with a local agency. So that's what I'm working on right now, and also preparing the grant application. So I just wanted to share that news with you today. It's hopeful news, and hopefully we'll get good news once again and get the grant. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gary. That's incredible news.
I turned it off.
Oh, okay. No, you. Yeah, it's me when I turn it on. I can just get up. It's not me? Okay. So having heard from Gary and from Kat, I'd like to open it up to you for comments or questions. Feel free to comment or ask a question of Kat or Gary or anybody that's up here now, and we'll do this for about 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how that goes, and then we will hear from Pat and Lorraine. Does anybody have a comment or question? Oh, just a second. Wait, no, wait for the mic. And please, yeah, wait for the mic. And if you could also, just to help us out when we're doing a transcript, state your name and where you're from. Thanks.
Okay. My name is Beth Anderson. I live in Desert Heights in 29 Palms, and I have a short statement. I don't know if now is appropriate, but Patty at Raven's Bookshop has a statement that I'd like to read.
Sure, go ahead. If it's just a couple of minutes, that's fine.
Yeah, it's short.
And then people can respond to that as well.
Okay. Patty and her family have lived in Indian Cove over 30 years, and she says, yes, my parents built 2 homes here in Indian Cove over 30 years ago, specifically for the beauty of this area. I raised my children here in 29, from 1971 to 1989, and never really left. The most important thing is to preserve the peace and serenity of the desert. We need the vast beauty, emptiness to some, uncompromised by progress that allows our brain and body to relax. That is one of the biggest things that draws people to the area. That is what makes this area so sacred to people who don't want to live in a large city. If you need that bustle, go to Yucca or Palm Springs. But don't think it's okay to bring that out here. Money can't buy this. Once it's ruined, it's just another desert town, nothing special.
Okay, does anybody want to jump in on that? Go ahead. If you'll just pass the mic to the woman in the back.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Rendon. I live in Joshua Tree. I wanted to speak not directly to the comments just said, but the prior speaker. My question is, what can the public, the people that live here, do to help facilitate this future planning of the migration for the animals to go through? Are we talking we want to coordinate cleanup teams and cleanup weekends in certain areas, or some education study groups through local libraries or schools? What can the public do to participate, to facilitate this plan?
Okay, my name is Pat Flanagan, and I'm on the board of the Morongo Basin Conservation Association. And the best way that you can answer your own question is, how can you facilitate that? How many people here are from 29 Palms? How many people here are from Joshua Tree? How many people here are from Yucca Valley? How many people here have read the general plan connected with their location? How many people here know the land use around the house that you live in? One of the ways that you can learn how to protect where you live is to read the general plan, which, if that sounds like I would rather stab myself in the chest than do that, I have a suggestion. I suggest that you get a bottle of wine, and if possible, another job if you need it, but see if you can't buy the written copy of the general plan and maybe development codes from the cities and the county, and then get your friends over who have the same feeling and read it. And that just go through it. And what you'll find is that those general plans and development codes are meant to answer that question. What can you do? What is protected out here? If you don't know where your house is and what is protected around you, what could happen around you, then you are vulnerable. And then, so you need to do this. This is essentially what I was going to talk about, so we're getting this taken care of. MBCA just is finishing writing up our comments to Offland. I spent a great deal of time making sure that within the comments are the parts of the land use services and the conservation overlay, et cetera, that will give you the information. And if you think it's boring, when you put your house there, it's not boring. It's fascinating, because you're going, oh, I have to do this. And the city of 29 Palms began an upgrade with their general plan in 2022, and they're going to continue with that, I believe. And so you can volunteer, and the smarter you are, the better it's going to come off. When I moved here in 2002, I came from Imperial Beach, and I was the education coordinator for the Tijuana River National Estuarine Research Reserve. And Imperial Beach is a very active city, but it couldn't be active with me because in education, you don't stand up and start dealing in politics. When I moved out here, one of the reasons was I just had to go down to City Hall. And then actually, one of the first things I was able to do was get on the General Plan Advisory Committee as they updated it. So I learned about general plans. They are not boring, not if they're your house that's in it. Have I convinced anybody that you better learn about it? You got to learn where you live. And if you think it's boring, get that bottle of wine. Get your neighbors. Get your kids if they're old enough. You learn when you're in school that you're going to learn all about why our nation is the way it is. We're going to learn about democracy. We're going to learn, but you never learn about what you can do, where you live, how you can protect it. And this is how you do it. And you'll hear, how many if I say CEQA, who wants to hear that? Not too many hands. So if I say the Environmental Quality Act and the California Environmental Quality Act, who wishes I'd shut up? The California Environmental Quality Act, if you can go to Offland for one thing and look at their study and their mitigated negative deck, and you can see all the things they talk about environmentally. The Environmental Quality Act says you deserve to know that. You have the right to know on what the planning bases its ideas and actions. And so you need to look out for yourself. How does that sound? So, maybe we ought to have little meetings in which we look out for ourselves, and we learn how to do that. We learn how to read it and not get bored. Because once your house is there, once your job is there, and somebody wants to put a hotel, or somebody wants to put a gas station across from where you live, it makes a difference. I'll bring the wine. Okay, so have I made myself clear? Okay.
We have a question for the man in the front row.
There we go. Thanks, everybody. My name is Ray Kennedy. I'm from Morongo Valley. Lots of us live in unincorporated San Bernardino County, and I think it's really important that we emphasize San Bernardino County, not just the cities here in the basin. Most of us, I would say, live in unincorporated San Bernardino County, which means I heard the gentleman over at the table saying, we have to go 80 miles to San Bernardino. A couple of things about that. We need our MAC back, our Municipal Advisory Committee. I have been advocating, I've been writing letters to the editor of the High Desert Star for 2 or 3 years. I've spoken from the remote location at Joshua Tree, which has also now been taken away from us. We need to take this seriously. We need to be pressuring the county not only to listen to us on a one-time basis, but to reopen the channels that we used to have to communicate with the county. The MAC needs to be brought back, and we need the Joshua Tree remote location permanent, not just on an occasional basis.
Ray, can you explain to everyone what the MAC is? Because they might not know.
Okay, the MAC represented for quite a while all of the different communities in unincorporated San Bernardino County. So Morongo Valley had somebody on there, Joshua Tree had somebody, Flamingo Heights, Wonder Valley, all of these areas in unincorporated San Bernardino County in the basin were represented on the MAC, and the MAC is an entity that is established in the California Government Code, California state law, as a channel for two-way communication between the Board of Supervisors and the citizens. So, rather than every individual having to go to San Bernardino and sign up and speak at a Board of Supervisors meeting, we could have MAC meetings, people could participate locally, and the MAC would have an official voice advising Supervisor Rao and the Board of Supervisors on issues related to the Morongo Basin. We no longer have that voice, and we need it back.
And they met at White Feather, right? White Feather in 62?
I only participated remotely during the pandemic because I also happened to be one of the 14 members of the California State Citizens Redistricting Commission, and I spoke to the MAC about the work of the Redistricting Commission, but I was never able to participate in person.
Pat?
I was on the MAC, and I represented Desert Heights, and David Fick over there was on way before me, and I think the original MAC, you were on it, so you can talk to us about it. It's really important, and for whatever reasons, our supervisor is not encouraged to do it, but if everybody was to ask, then we might all be able to know what's going on around us. So thank you very much for that. And anybody in I'm Desert Heights, I have to know about the county's plan, and 29, because I have a lot of mouth.
Gary? And then I'll go to you in the back.
Whoa. Sorry about that. I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on the previous question you had about the wildlife overcrossings and how you could advocate for them. And between Mojave Desert Land Trust and Morongo Basin Conservation Association and other groups, when we get a little bit farther along, we will be making calls for support and telling you how you can either sign a petition or send a letter in to express your support. And we've already got a number of the sort of traditional groups like the National Park Service. Josh Tree has indicated that they would submit a letter of support, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. But we need citizens, and we also need business owners and what we call non-traditional voices to show the decision makers that the interest in this and the desire to see this happen is widespread. And at some point, we'll also be doing fundraising for construction and future management of it, because it will have a natural earthen bottom and be vegetated and have to be maintained. So just keep an eye out with MBCA and Mojave Desert Land Trust, and there will be opportunities to join in the advocacy for them. So.
Thank you, Gary. There were a couple of comments in the back. How about the person there, and then you in the blue in the back.
Okay, MJ Fiocco, 29 Palms. In addition to reading the plans, are there procedures that we should become familiar with regard to waivers or with regard to our legal rights to appeal? Because it's not just the plan, it's what the decision makers do, quote unquote, in conformance with the plan that is going to be the real issue. And and I'm guilty, I need to go read the plan you cited, Pat, but I was wondering if there was anything else we should read.
Well, I would say something that's really important if you're in the city of 29 Palms is join our buddy, Mr. Krushat, Commissioner Krushat, at Planning Commission meetings and get a sense of what's happening, what sorts of projects are passing through the Planning Commission, because the Planning Commission is the first stop for a lot of these things. There's also a lot of talk on council about reopening the general plan. It's the challenge with reopening a general plan is it's an extremely expensive process. It's like $1.5 million to open our general plan. And so they've been, I think, debating whether or not it gets opened, whether or not it gets opened piecemeal. But really, I would say get involved in local government and be aware of what's coming up on those dockets, because that's where those things will happen.
Hi. Oh, wow. That's loud. I'm Atlas from the Joshua Tree Village Neighbors and Stop Lovemore Ranch. You've probably received our newsletter recently. My question is actually about the ABC and how it's being encouraged while the MAC is being discouraged. So I'd like to understand why that's happening. Do you need more clarification? The ABC seems to be getting a lot of support from Don Rowe, and people are sort of saying, oh, let's do the ABC.
I don't know what it is.
It's the artist business. It's like a combo of artists and businesses. It's
It's
the new chamber.
It's the new chamber in Joshua Tree.
Yeah, so how are those different? How do they serve together or in cross purposes?
The MAC is established in state law. So there are MACs all over California. There are MACs all over San Bernardino County. In fact, Supervisor Rao established 2 more MACs in Crest Forest and Lakeview, Lake Arrowhead at the January meeting. So, you know, the MACs have this official status under state law that this other body doesn't. And you know, my question in the public press and so forth is, if there's bandwidth, quote unquote, which was a phrase she used in a up close show interview in February of 2023, she said that she and her staff didn't have enough bandwidth to support the Morongo Basin MAC. Well, suddenly she has bandwidth to establish 2 more MACs in her district here in San Bernardino County. I don't buy it. So we need to keep the pressure on to bring back the MAC.
Yeah, and there has been a move lately just in some of the local communities to form quasi Chamber of Commerce organizations, you know, especially in 29 Palms, which doesn't have a Chamber of Commerce anymore, but now has Rediscover 29, which is functioning as a quasi-chamber of commerce. Yucca Valley has a Chamber of Commerce, but I think there's a move in Yucca Valley to also form an alternative to the Chamber of Commerce. And I think the ABC is an attempt at a Chamber of Commerce organization in Joshua Tree. And these might be lobbying groups, but they are not directly associated with a governmental body in the same way that the MAC was. That would be the difference, I think. We should probably go on and let Lorraine let Lorraine have a few words, and then we'll open it back up for public comment and questions.
On? Yes, on. I will scrap my planned kind of brief overview of MBCA by saying instead that all of these issues MBCA is aware of and has worked on. Our mode of operation is kind of multifaceted. We have a website, MB for Morongo Basin, conservation.org, and we consider our region of interest not just the Morongo Basin, from Morongo Valley to Wonder Valley, and also out to the west to Lucerne Valley, Johnson Valley, but we consider the importance of the entire Mojave Desert and truly the entire California desert region as the area that we are concerned about. Cindy stole my, I was going to say that, do you know that 29 Palms is the initial heartbeat of MBCA 56 years ago when Susan Lucky Riley and her contemporaries helped change the Edison plan for the power towers along the Highway 62. So the only other things I wanted to mention, because again, to say that the MAC, by the way, I'm not sure anybody ever said, it's the Municipal Advisory Council, MAC, okay? I'm not sure that anybody said that specifically. MBCA, you'll see every newsletter that our president, Steve Bardwell, writes, e-blast, have a little phrase in there, bring back the MAC. And we remember how, and David and Pat and perhaps others in the room definitely participated if we're not on it, but it advises, it gets a community consensus and gives the advice, or the, again, community advice to the decision makers. Now, we haven't had that, but MBCA is an arm of that with, not the official state category, but we have done so many comment letters. We get up in public, whether it's at a local or a county down in San Bernardino or at the Joshua Tree Center. We make those statements, but we don't just say, we don't want this. We really try, and more we're trying to say, and this is in the topic of finding balance. Okay, you guys, you want to create this development here. Now, whether it's a solar project or a housing project or a resort, we are very seldom going to stop it, and we know that. So what can we point out to them with research behind it? This lady does so much research. She has written comment letters of 20 and 30 pages with research-based content, and this is what can make a difference. And again, MBCA tries to do this on the website with our e-blasts, with our presentations, content on the website. And one of our latest things, maps, whether they fall down or not, which of course they do. Some of you may remember when we've had our annual meetings some years ago when short-term rentals were the topic, we had a map that's twice the size of those showing a dot for every STR, short-term rental, when that was, it's still an issue, but when it was the hottest issue around. We know that visual learning and that visual representation is very important. So that's become a more frequent when we are at an event like this. But as Pat has reminded me, we will put these online so that you will be able to see more of that too. Because we want to represent the issues and help you understand them. And then, as Pat so eloquently spoke about, find those avenues to make your statement, hopefully with our help. We're always glad to help. And I'll stop there with just encouragement to get one of our little booklets, our 50th anniversary booklets, gives you our history of some of our issues and accomplishments. Again, we have in there the names of, we think, all the board members who ever were on the MBCA board from back in 1969 forward. So some of you who are longtime 29 Palms members might even find some names that you haven't thought of for a long time, but they were part of our base and part of our development. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. We can continue the conversation for a few minutes before Rich is on board for his end of the presentations. Any comments or questions?
Me.
Oh, you have something? You go, Matt. You go, Pat. Go ahead.
I always have a mouth to open. Can you hold this a sec? So, from this to me, this meeting sounds like a MAC. It's exactly sounds you're bringing your thoughts to the table and people are hearing them. This sounds like a MAC. How many people have read the notice of intent and the mitigated negative deck for the Offland project? Okay, good for you. If I was to say, what about when you go there, there's 13 elements that they discuss. The first one is aesthetics. And the first probability, hold this for a second, please. This is just giving you an example why you need to go and look at these documents. So aesthetics, would the project have a substantial adverse effect on a scenic vista? Okay? Okay, they're asking that question. You get to answer it. And you also get to see this notice of intent, how it answers it, and if you disagree, you now have a perfectly good place to put your disagreement. You disagree with this, and that makes a huge difference. So substantially damaged scenic resources, including but not limited to trees, rock outcroppings, and historic buildings within a state scenic highway. How many trees do we have in our scenic vistas? That's not a tree like they're meaning. Nor do we have the... So we have to give it another definition. Open space, going on for miles, reaching through to the edge of the park, is a scenic vista. And you can discuss that. So get it.
Yeah, and I think what we can do to help that along is when not us, but Eleanor, who will be writing on this event for Desert Trumpet, we can link to the CEQA elements. It's really an interesting read because what they essentially, we won't link to the mitigated negative declaration for offline because that's a huge document. But it is really an interesting read, as Pat has educated us over the last few years, to actually read through the CEQA elements, which break down the different aspects of how a development might affect a given area in a pretty granular way. And it sometimes causes you to think differently about how you see, say, the parcels around your home or a development that might happen downtown relative to this long list of different kinds of characteristics of how the movement of that earth in that space might have different impacts on everything from air quality to light to wildlife to the aesthetics of a vista. And we'll link to one of those. It's an easy download. It's not a difficult read, and so that you'll have the opportunity to do that from the article.
And we can put a standard one on the website for MBCA, so you can just go and get it and begin to ask yourself questions and know that any project that you become aware of has got to answer those questions too.
A question in the back. And wait for the mic, please.
Thank you guys for being here and holding this. Does anybody have a take on the recent lack of communication from San Bernardino County on public comment time periods for once we have our list and can point to specifics and are ready to share how we feel? We haven't even been informed that there's a time period to do that, right?
Are you referring to a specific project?
I am, concerning the ongoing Lovemore Ranch talks, concerning the Sunset and 62 luxury something or other. David Fick is keeping us up to date on what we've missed because we haven't been informed by the county, I guess the planning department initially. So they're getting mitigated negative declarations, and we haven't seen any report, right, to come back to.
Pat, do you have an update on that?
Well, I've heard is that the county really you need to talk directly to the county because they are remiss. And Lovemore got all their stuff in, but the people who live around where the project was, very few of them got a notice, and then that notice wasn't followed up. And so I think that's part of the suit that's against the county right now, is that they didn't follow through. And that's what is important to do as a community. And that costs money because you need a lawyer. So then you do a GoFundMe type thing. But that's community working together. And no, Lovemore was negligent, very negligent, the county, in letting you know. And usually there's a 30-day comment. When a project comes out, you get 30 days to do your initial comments for this notice of intent. They only gave 20. And then they have to, that material is sent to the Planning Commission or the City Council or Board of Supervisors, depending. And then, so you gotta stay, and then, but it's hard.
Yeah,
like
and
to-
it's really difficult to be vigilant. And one of the challenge I know, for instance, that I'm within the notification area of the Offland project, and so I had a conversation. I became curious about what the range of notification was for that particular project. It's a 152-acre parcel, but there's nothing to the north of it. Nothing to the south of it in terms of homes. There's Highway 62, and it's very sparsely populated to the other side of 62. There are 6 homes to the east of it, and then a very dense neighborhood to the west of it. And so the way that these notifications work is generally they're sent out within a perimeter of the parcel boundary. So what's typical is a 300-foot perimeter around a parcel boundary. So depending on who falls within that perimeter, you may or may not get the actual notice, even though the project impact may be much broader than that. For Offland, because of the nature of the sparseness of the area, they increased that boundary from 300 feet to 500 feet, which meant that 61 letters went out. There's 680 people living in Indian Cove, in about 320 houses. So, and some of that's also cost, I mean, a lot of the cities here don't have a lot of money, and to some degree I think they're doing what they can. This is why it's important to be vigilant with your planning commissions, be vigilant with the planning commission at the county level, which I know is extremely difficult, because that's how you're going to know what's going on. And of course our local press, I mean, we're trying to cover this as best we can, but we are also thin in that respect.
And if I could just add a brief...
And then we'll go back to the back.
On this topic and what Ally was pointing out, in one of the things MBCA has done, we put on our website the hearing for the appeal for Lovemore Ranch, and we've got in there timestamps for various people speaking. Dawn Rao, right toward the end, actually said to the land use planning people that they were negligent. I mean, she said it in a kind of a soft way, but she was pretty positive about saying you need to do a bit. I hope that you, the department, will do a better job of notifying people in the future. Hey, if it hasn't happened, when you write your letter, go to that and say, at this meeting, on this date, at this time, you said this. And you can quote her, because we've got the video. Bring it back.
Atlas, do you want it?
Okay, my name's Jet Tucker. I live in Joshua Tree. I have a question about that same Highway 62 and Sunset project. They've quoted that they're going to move a waterway. Can you just move a waterway? It comes down the hill. The county has put in a brand new waterway since that horrendous flood a few years ago. It empties onto 62, flows across, and goes through that land. Where I was originally from, Corps of Engineers, if you mess with a waterway, you are in big trouble. And they've stated they're going to move the waterway. Who has that right, and who can we protest to?
Gary, because I'm not familiar with the project.
Yeah, during the course of my career, I was involved in situations like that. And if it is a blue line stream on a USGS map, or it has certain vegetation that's considered riparian vegetation that makes it waters of the state, then they need a permit from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, a stream lake alteration agreement. And certainly to move a major wash in Joshua Tree would require that. So I would guess that they are seeking a permit, so you could reach out to the California Department of Fish and Wildlife and make your concerns known to them.
Hi, I'll just say a quick comment. On San Bernardino's website, there are ways to sign up for notices. You can a la carte any category for notices about anything and get digests. It takes time to go through it, decide what you want to get, and then you have to read the emails that you get, which are long and boring and very, exhaustive, but that's one way that we can push back, is if we subscribe, we see something, and then we can alert the community, hey, did you see this? So we have to do that extra work, unfortunately.
Yeah, the City of 29 Palms has a similar e-update system where you can sign up to be noticed if there's a planning commission meeting, a city council meeting, or any of the different bodies in 29 Palms. And generally, you'll receive a notice with a link to the agenda for the upcoming meeting.
Further on the county planning process, there used to be community plans, which, as a result of the 2016 planning process in the county, were done away with and replaced by what they call community action guides. So the community action guides, they exist for Homestead Valley, Joshua Tree, Morongo Valley, Pioneer Town, and Wonder Valley. The responsibility for monitoring the implementation of those community action guides rests with the members of the community. And, we bought our property in Morongo Valley in 2017 after that process was already concluded, but I can tell you, having been, following Morongo Valley activities and I mean, not that they're politics, but Morongo Valley politics, we're not doing anything that I'm aware of to monitor implementation of our community action guide. And I think all of these communities that have community action guides need to be on top of them, because at some point the county's going to turn around and say, well, you obviously didn't care enough to monitor the implementation of your own community action guide, so why do we need to listen to you? So I think that's an important thing that we can all be doing, those of us in the unincorporated areas that have community action guides. We need to be monitoring, and where changes are needed, we need to be advocating for those changes.
Yeah, and I think something that maybe is lacking a bit in the Morongo Basin, that started to happen when I was in LA, is the forming of neighborhood councils. And very often people wait until something's happening in your neighborhood at a point of crisis to think, okay, I think we'd better form a neighborhood group. But in fact, it's possible to be proactive and form neighborhood groups around the areas where you live. And pretty much in the county and in both Yucca and 29, there are neighborhoods that are defined spaces, more or less. And so maybe the beginnings of dealing with those community action guides and the beginnings of beginning to address some of these potential planning issues, and maybe even reading your general plan, is beginning to form neighborhood groups with your neighbors, have the wine, get the plan, see how that plan affects your neighborhood specifically, and just start at that granular level. And think about, well, what things do we need here? Do we need a community market, for instance? What kind of development do we actually need to make our neighborhood function better? And what kind of things do we not need? And start to think that way and advocate along those lines for what works for your specific, couple of mile area. And that would be a way to start. David?
Hello, David Fick, Morongo Basin board member, MBCA board member, and also on the Joshua Basin Water District. And what happened is there was mentioned about what's called the Joshua Tree Resort, which was a project that's in progress. We don't know at what stage it's at, but our county hasn't told us anything about this project, and it was already a change. It's a 40-acre project that includes 27 acres of just natural. But what happened was our county hasn't told us anything about it, and it was found by a friend of me and Gary's clearinghouse, statewide clearinghouse, and he came upon the project and he sent it to me, and I sent it in social media and talked about it. And it's a project that the initial study was circulated on April 25th. And when you have a project larger than 20 acres, you're supposed to notify everybody within a quarter mile of that project. Joshua Basin Water District, which is a public agency, wasn't notified. Joshua Basin Water District, which has land adjacent to this, wasn't notified. Nobody within a quarter mile of that project was notified. So we don't know the mystery of that situation. So that's what she was referring to. We just came across it about a week ago. So our county is rather opaque in telling the local community what to do. Also, I was on the JT-MAC from 2006 to 2012. I helped establish the JT video situation in 2012. The MB MAC was modeled after the Joshua Tree MAC of decades and decades. And so they expanded it to 9 different situations. And I feel the MAC serves the community more than the county. It's an exchange like this right here. Of course, you know, the MAC covers about 5 or 6 different subjects per meeting, and they would have a report by sheriffs and fire and all that. So the community gets educated about the community and not necessarily about the county. And right now we have the county as the most opaque situation we've had in 35, 40 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and probably Kurt can talk about this as well. I mean, the county is incredibly difficult to cover. It's such a large space and it's so far away. But definitely I know on our end, on the Desert Trumpet end, I mean, we're conscious of the need to have better coverage of the county, and we're just trying to figure out a way to manage it. And because really one of the challenges we have in the basin is there are essentially 2 large press outlets and 1 little tiny one. and between us, it's still really tough. And I just don't know how to do that better given the resources, but we're so conscious of it. And this is one of the struggles is, you know, that's why we have the free press in our Constitution, is our job is to cover these things. But it also, in a county like San Bernardino, which I think is the largest county in the country, it becomes quite a challenge. So if you do have information about projects that aren't being properly covered, do feel free to let us know. Because we will do our best to try to get the word out. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to you, Rich. And then Rich will speak for a few minutes, and then we'll open it up for the final round of conversation.
That's great, Cindy, but I don't have a microphone.
Oh, but I do.
I can project, but
That you can have mine. They want you to be. And I am extremely generous.
I have a microphone with a longer cable.
Give me mine.
The one Lorraine has got.
Oh, okay, mine's.
Okay, there we go. I'm going to use Cindy's.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. That's loud, isn't it? Fun fact, public speaking is the thing I like to do least in the world. And as someone who stands up in front of people and does something quite a lot, this is the most terrifying thing for me. So I would like to say thanks to all of our speakers today, because I feel like I've learned a huge amount in the last hour, and now I'm going to talk a little bit as a business owner and a resident of 29 Palms about a specific development that is coming our way. And I'm going to read off a piece of paper. Oh, my name is Rich Good.
Just a little further from your mouth.
A little bit further from my mouth, like this?
Yeah.
Can you still hear me? Yeah. There we go. Sorry. Anyway, my name is Rich Good, and I'm a business owner here in 29 Palms. I've been a part-time resident since 2006, and I've lived here full-time for the last 10 years. Like many of us here, I'm a transplant. I grew up in England, and I was drawn to the high desert from the moment I first visited the national park in 1998. I was captivated by the natural beauty of the landscape and the unique creative community I've now become part of. I chose to live in Indian Cove for these same reasons. It is a small rural neighborhood of some 600 residents with expansive views, dark skies, and a very welcoming community. I'm a touring musician as one of my other jobs, and I love returning to the quiet of Indian Cove after all the noise that that job entails. In 2023, my partner Dana and I opened a shop downtown that celebrates the culture of 29 Palms, and we filled it with goods and much of our local goods and much of our own artwork. We wanted to serve the local community with fun events and give tourists some insight into the story of the high desert. In the last 5 years, we've seen a great many new businesses grow up and give the town a vibrant center once again. From my recollection, 29 Palms Center was not as vibrant as it is today when I first moved here in the early 2000s. And that's no slight on 29 Palms of the early 2000s. I just think that things are happening right now that are very positive. So we're very happy to be part of this reinvigoration. And there's still much to be done, but there's a cohesion with local business owners and an ethos of wanting to do it right. To do it well, to do it with style, to do it for the locals as much as the visitors. And that's how you build a community to last. I think that's a really important point because we're here under the title Finding Balance today, and we've talked a lot about development and how development can encroach upon us and how to push back against it. But I also think that we need to remember that development actually keeps our community thriving. And so under that title, Finding Balance, what we're trying to do here is find the balance where we can develop our town and we can grow it, but we need to do it in the right way. A year ago, I heard about a new resort being planned on my doorstep in the Indian Cove. The developer, then called Yonder, planned a large resort on the eastern side of the neighborhood. A Texas-based company organized a presentation to introduce us to their plan. The community overwhelmingly expressed their distaste for the idea at that meeting, and it was clear that the project was controversial. Yonder rebranded and came back as Ovland, with a marginally reduced development. They have since stopped talking to the very community it will affect, and instead have opted to lobby our city planners to push the project through. I know we've mentioned Ovland a couple of times today, but I'm going to give you some facts on Ovland for those of you who may not have researched this project all that well. So here we go. Why does this matter? As a business owner, I am pro-development in 29 Palms. I want to see our town flourish. Carefully planned new developments will help us grow while maintaining the unique character that drew us all here in the first place. Projects like Reset Hotel, Corner 62, the Historic Plaza, Hotel Wren, Tin Town, I can go on with these names, are encouraging increased visitorship while not inflicting unnecessary damage. They're often improving existing buildings. And I'm not sure if this is still happening, but the scheduled Hilton build is also using commercially zoned property in the center of town. I don't know if that's still happening, but let me explain why Ovland is a perfect example of not doing it right. How developing the high desert can have a negative impact that lasts a very long time. Here's the top bullet points you need to know. The Ovland Resort will cover 52 acres on an 152-acre parcel within the Indian Cove neighborhood. The proposed site is currently zoned residential for 60 houses. Ovland is applying to have the land rezoned to commercial in order to build this large resort. That resort will consist of 100 cabins, one main lodge, a secondary lodge, dorms for workers, a restaurant, outdoor movie theater, parking for 132 vehicles, and a custom sewage facility. Have you heard the term red flag? In order to develop, they will have to pave Lear Avenue. Many residents will find a busy road feet from their yards overnight. With an estimated increase in traffic of 894 vehicle trips per day in Indian Cove, that is a very big change to withstand. There has not been a full environmental impact report on this property, and now the city is pushing a mitigated negative declaration to skirt around even doing that. This means the entire project is being greenlit under the flimsy study that Ovland themselves conducted in 2023. This is irresponsible and downright sneaky behavior by both the developers and the city. There's many more details of concern with this project, but let's focus on the impact here for a minute. Number one, residents of Indian Cove are in for a complete upheaval as development begins. Construction will likely see a year or more of noise and dust. Number two, every creature will be displaced if not eradicated. Desert tortoise, burrowing owls, snakes, badgers, kangaroo rats, kit fox, etc., etc. The list goes on. In my mind, tortoise versus bulldozer, it doesn't even bear thinking about. Number three, our neighborhood population in Indian Cove will increase 45% under average resort occupancy. That's a lot of car and foot traffic for a small community to take on board. Number four, Ovland will argue that their resort will bring businesses to 29, but the fact remains that this neighborhood sits equidistant between Joshua Tree and 29 Palms. With its own restaurant and gift store on site, will they even be encouraging people to drive to 29 Palms for meals or shopping? Number five, what does this project invite if it is successful in rezoning? Where does that end? Do we have a Walmart in Sherman Highlands? At what point does 29 become a strip mall? Number six, the Ovland Resort is linked to the proposed Harmony Solar Farm, which is taking up the slack of housing lost to the resort. The visual and environmental impact of the solar farm and the resort will be massive. Number seven, once it's done, it's done. When completed, our quiet neighborhood is forever changed. You can't take it back. In the event the resort fails, the desert will have a new junkyard in one of its most picturesque neighborhoods. Having seen this project unfold and reviewed it in detail, my vote is say no to Ovland. I'm pro-29, and this development is not pro-29. This is a land grab for profit by a company from Houston, Texas. Do we let them plow through our desert? Why don't we do development right? To answer that question, we need to find the balance. If we're going to have a new resort or any kind of developments in 29 Palms, let's have it benefit everyone, the city, its people, and businesses, and neighborhoods. Let's use commercially zoned property or even existing buildings if possible. Let's put these developments within the community, close to other businesses, so that everything our unique city has to offer can be accessible. Let's have beautiful architecture that helps the city look great and draws people to our center. We can welcome development and grow our little city without erasing our dark skies or displacing wildlife corridors in the process. 29 Palms is a place I'm always excited to share with others. Let's keep it that way. Did it. Dropped it. Thank you. I survived.
So there's a specific example of something that's happening in this community, but it follows on, of course, several other examples that have been successfully fought, like Flamingo 640, the Wonder Inn, and these were all commercial developments in rural living zoning. And I think that we wanted to sort of have a specific example of some of the issues that we're talking about and how those things come into play. And with that, I'd like to open it up to more conversation and questions. Start here.
Whoa, sorry about that. Excuse me. My throat here. So I'm Hillary Sloan, and I'm with C1077. And my question is, what's the next step? What are you proposing from today on?
Are you asking that specifically about Ovland? Or are you asking that generally about what to do next in terms of engagement with the general issue of this tension between economic development and economic preservation or community, neighborhood preservation?
Yes, about the bigger picture and the meeting. Is this going to be something that could be regular meeting? Getting together, talking it, because there's always projects coming up. And what I'm getting is you're not always informed about the projects, so it's not like you can do something directly with the developers. You're searching for what they're planning next. So this is not just for the article, this is for me. I'm questioning what's the next step. The MAC is one idea. Community meetings, showing up at meetings, even meetings outside of where we live, because everything in this whole area is affecting all of us.
Yeah, we're an island, essentially, so any development that happens in this island of the Morongo Basin generally affects everybody in the Morongo Basin. I think that's a great point. Well, I'm going to throw that back out to the folks out here. I mean, let's brainstorm. Thoughts about what those next steps might be. Atlas? Pass the mics around.
Oh, can I get... Sorry, Sorry. Jennifer Rendon again, Joshua Tree. I was going to say something that kind of ties in with what can we do. I have a degree in city planning 5 years ago, but my brain still goes there. I thought, what if the city of 29 Palms had a moratorium on development, private development, not public, outside of a downtown zone that would contribute X amount of trips per day. If it exceeds this magic X trips per day outside of this overlay area of downtown 29 Palms, the moratorium would say it cannot be built. And this moratorium could be 3 years or 5 years or whatever the community agrees on until a certain study is done for a thorough environmental impact report on developments that are above this level. That would really protect the land. It would protect the people that are here, that are living here, and from corporations outside as they are from Houston, Texas right now trying to do what they're doing. So that's just one tool, moratorium with specifics.
Thank you, Jennifer.
One of my comments is that Joshua Tree, because of Lovemore, we've been thinking, what if we incorporate? Is that a way to buffer us? And what I'm learning is that obviously incorporation in 29 Palms is not preventing this problem. So back to city planning, like what is the thing that can be built into incorporation or town protection that can be this gatekeeper from this kind of destructive development that's just coming on all sides, and it's whack-a-mole for all of us. Do we become our own county, like a high desert county? Can we secede from San Bernardino and be like Mojave County? I mean, we would have to have our own congressperson, but I mean, why not? Let's think out of the box.
Ray, up in the front.
We don't need our own member of Congress. I mean, as I said, I was on the redistricting commission. Alpine County is tiny, doesn't have its own member of Congress, doesn't have its own member of the state assembly, but it's its own county. And I have been looking into this. The last county established in California was Imperial County, and that was a little bit over 100 years ago. Is it something that we want to work towards? It's not going to happen anytime soon, but, maybe it is something that we want to work towards.
Well, it's really an interesting idea. I mean, why is it due to the population density or lack of population density that makes San Bernardino County, just in terms of square miles, so huge? And why is San Bernardino County one county and not 5 counties? I don't really know the politics behind that or how that came to be, but you could certainly see that there could be a breakdown, maybe not into 5 counties, but into 3, that might make more sense, because we've seen it already, even in terms of the county trying to deal with their housing element and trying to deal with STRs and trying to come up with a way to sort of cap STRs, which was written into their housing element but never really enacted, because it was just not possible to sort of think of a cap that would operate across such a huge area. You'd have to go district by district, and even that doesn't work. So, it's an interesting thought, actually, to think outside of the box, and should we start advocating for a change at the county level? Oh, I'm sorry.
Hiding in the bleachers. Hi, I'm Caitlin Gill, owner and operator of Joshua Tree Astronomy Adventures. So dark skies are near and dear to my heart, and I think they're a reason a lot of us have pride of place where we live. So I'm very excited that folks are eager to preserve that quality of where we live. I'm also a new resident and grew up in Napa, California. So I want to speak briefly to my experience growing up in an area heavily impacted by tourism that is also ecologically fragile. And what I can say from growing up in Napa is I watched decades of struggle as my community agreed on what they didn't want, but could not come together to define what they did want. And whenever you're in that situation, you wind up with these kind of sneaky actors that are able to get us all in a room talking about what we don't want and find everywhere they can nibble on the edge to move development, because all we've only pushed down, we haven't defined what we want to pop up. Things are going to pop up anyway. This statistic is probably dated, but Napa was the 2nd most visited location in California next to Disneyland. We weren't going to stop them from coming. The tourists and the guests are going to come here. There is a national park here. We have to be able to define what we want from this fact, this immutable fact that people are coming. So as long as we acknowledge that tourism is not something we can prevent, whether we like its impact or not, we need to work together to define the pop-up. What's the positive that we get as a community? Can this growth be constructive? It did take Napa 40 of my 44 years to start moving in the direction of defining these wants. And now tourism is effectively funneled to one central area in town. It's, without getting into details, the town did manage, in the broader area, did manage to find ways to develop without ruining neighborhoods, without compromising the quality of life for people who chose rural living in that region. It's still a delicate balancing act. The primary industry there impacts the ecology. That's very similar here, where it doesn't take a vineyard to change ecology. Napa's fragile, the desert's even more so. So just having people present changes our ecology. And it sounds like one thing we agree on is that we don't want things to be damaged ecologically here. That's something we all dearly value. So how do we allow this flow of tourists to move into our community, because we cannot stop them? I heard Rich say some exciting things about focusing on existing buildings, focusing on revitalizing areas of our community that have fallen over time, just aren't as well utilized as they could be. And there are ways that the city has true power to incentivize growth in these areas. Seeking out and recruiting developers we do like the work of. Incentivizing small businesses with grants and loans is vitally important. And choosing developers whose operations we admire in other places. It's part of civic planning to look around at communities that are comparable to yours in one way or another and pick the parts of the plans that they like and copy them. If we took Sedona's Dark Skies program and implemented it here, I cannot tell you how delighted I'd be and how much that would change the investment I've made in my community as a business owner. So I'm very excited about us coming together to decide what we don't want. And I think as we gather with our bottles of wine and our stacks of plans to read, it's going to be really fun to kind of banter about what we're not excited about. The bigger challenge is going to be agreeing on how we do want to grow. And I'll just conclude, because I can go on. We're not going to stop them. They're coming. Tourists are coming to this region. They're going to keep driving past the Home Depots and the Walmarts because that isn't what drew them here. They're going to keep going past communities that Joshua Tree is incredibly beautiful, but 29 Palms has resources that people are going to keep moving toward. So this community in particular has a real opportunity in the next decade to change the way we perceive these guests to our area. And I'd encourage meetings like this one to focus less on what we don't want. That's easy. And start the conversation on how we do revitalize businesses downtown that are just open space, change the face of lodging in this region to be more appealing, and focus on small business development, since that's the character it seems like we all want. It is an opportunity, and I'd be excited to see our town embrace it as one.
Thank you. I just want to say also, you know, my grandma, who you know, my family's been here since 1961, and my grandma would bemoan the development of Yucca Valley. Not in that it's ugly, but she would say they're stealing all our sales taxes. They are stealing the sales taxes from us. And so the idea of what do we need in a positive way? What do we want to have actually happen in place of the things that we don't want is such a valuable point, because those things that pop up will drive revenue into the city, and we desperately need that, in truth. So let's talk about that a little bit. What are some of those things that come to mind?
Okay, stealing our taxes just automatically brings up to me the issue of TOT. So for Yucca and for 29 Palms, you get your own TOT. For those of us in unincorporated San Bernardino County, the county back in 2009, I think it was, decided, no, you don't get to keep your TOT. We need it. We're undergoing a financial crisis. We need the TOT. So the county has grabbed all of our TOT money from the unincorporated areas for 15 years or more. Some of us think it's time to push the county to give it back, or at least part of it, or at least tell us how they are spending the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we are helping them generate. On another issue, going back to a question before, when there was a candidate forum for the supervisor's race held at Joshua Tree Community Center, I raised a question that I think stopped people in their tracks, which was California state law sets a minimum number of supervisors. 5 supervisors is the minimum. There's no maximum. Nothing says that we can't have a large enough board of supervisors so that the Morongo Basin has better representation, that we're not sharing a representative with people whose interests are very different from ours. So I just want to drop that on the floor. Thanks.
And I think the woman right behind you hasn't spoken too much in red.
I think if I had 2 takeaways from this meeting, is we have 2 paths to follow. One is to figure out how to better play whack-a-mole and save what we've got. And the other is, because People don't want to hear about what you don't want. They want to hear about what you do want. And maybe using this group to coalesce, we've got a city planner, we've got somebody who's lived through it. Let's pull the group together and see if we can't develop a plan that we can take to the city planners, that we can take to the city council, and if we're successful here, take it to the county. Just a thought.
Hi, my name is Erin Gatlin. I want to just get to a couple of comments that we've just had recently. I think the idea of really focusing on what it is that we do want is crucial, because that's how we decide which of all these great ideas that the Idea Fairy has brought to us today. And when I say the Idea Fairy, I do not mean that to be pejorative in any way. I mean, there's been a lot of really interesting ideas that have been floated today. We can't focus on those without having a broader sense of where we're trying to get to. If everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. And so I think spending some time thinking about how to think about moving forward in a group, and I wouldn't just do it in 29, I would think more broadly than 29. I would begin in Yucca Valley or down in Morongo and come all the way up, because as someone has noted here before, anything that happens in one part of our area happens to everybody else. So if Yucca Valley gets a cold, then everybody else gets the cold. Or if somebody sneezes in Wonder Valley, we're gonna get a cold in Yucca Valley. So, and then, so how do we get that started would be my key question.
And be sure to tell us your name before you speak as well.
Okay, I'm Jet Tucker again from Joshua Tree. And the county took our tax about 215 or 16. Before that, we got 25% of it back, and that's when they took 100%. And we do have a dark sky ordinance here. I don't know if 29 has it, but I think they do. The general area has dark sky ordinance. And the problem with, you're talking about Napa, but we have 29 Palms, Wonder Valley, Joshua Tree, which is under county, Yucca Valley, Morongo Basin under the county. We have so many entities that it's hard to have one push that everybody agrees on, which would be very nice, but that's what we're aiming for. But it's hard to fight all these when you have got the county involved.
Caitlin, can you say that into a mic?
No, that was a very napkin move of me. Napa County abuts Sonoma County, St. Helena, Calistoga are smaller communities. Napa is our Yucca Valley. You could consider St. Helena to be our Joshua Tree and Calistoga to be our 29 Palms. They stretch between two counties. There's interlocking ecology, but divided politics that had to be overcome, and it took a really long time. So similar to the way we say Joshua Tree, and we mean the entire Morongo Basin, Napa had to find an identity that included all those communities affected by all the people who came to Napa. So I hear you, and that was part of decades of conversation in the Valley to try to figure out how to manage all these visitors. But they keep coming. They're still coming. They're still going.
Any final comments? Let's move towards, what we'll do here, and then we'll come back to you, Atlas. Beth, and then Atlas.
I'm Beth from Desert Heights, and the first time I lived up in this region, I live here permanently now, but 5 years ago I lived here behind the substation off the highway, and I didn't know there were stores in 29 other than the liquor store at Lear and 62. I thought that's where the town ended. As far as you're saying, all the people at the big resort won't go into is downtown. You know, they'll go to Joshua Tree and to Yucca. I didn't know there was anything more.
And Atlas, did you have a comment? Or am I not seeing someone? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead, and
Sorry.
then we'll come back.
I just wanted to get clear on the state of play today for Ovland. Is this a done deal, or are we doing something that now?
It's not a done deal. Ovland is in escrow on the property. They don't even yet own the parcel. We are at the point of the much discussed mitigated negative declaration. Is everybody clear on what a mitigated negative declaration actually is? Oh, I'm going to try. I mean, I'm kind of a newbie here on that topic. So essentially, you know, when a development is coming forward, sometimes they'll go out and they'll do a series of studies themselves. And in fact, when Ovland had their first meeting with the city, I asked, are you going to promise to do a full EIR? And this is a meeting more than a year ago now. And Nicole Christ from Terra Nova piped up and said, oh no, we're going to do a negative mitigated declaration. And I so this plan has been there from the very beginning, and they've gone out and done a biological study, a cultural study, a watershed study. You know, there's like 10 or 12 studies that affect the ground, the sky, the wildlife, and the traffic that would be generated by their project, and these studies are paid for by the developer. And then they present these studies to your local planning department. Your planning department takes those studies and reads through them. And in this case, actually, I think it was Terra Nova that wrote that mitigated negative declaration, not our planning department. But in any case, so the contractor then writes up the CEQA with those studies and then says, well, this particular element will have no impact, sort of have some impact, or have a lot of impact. And generally, the studies are paid for by the developer. They're not necessarily completely unbiased, and neither in this case is the person writing up the series of impacts in the CEQA document. But if they go through the CEQA document and they mark enough things that say mitigated impact, in other words, the developer there is impact, but the developer has made enough changes that impact is minimized, or no impact, then the planning department can then declare what's called a mitigated negative declaration, which then says that they don't have to do the full EIR. They've already proven that their impacts have been, quote unquote, mitigated. How was that? So that's
pretty good.
So at that point, then it opens up to a public comment period, which is where the Ovland project is now. We're in the middle of a public comment period on this. I always get it mixed up. Negative mitigated declaration, mitigated negative declaration. MND. I know it's I can't do it, but anyway. And that public comment period will end on June 17th. Then the Planning Commission will take the mitigated negative declaration and read it, and then they will read through all the public comments, and they will have a hearing. And at that hearing, they will determine whether or not they are going to recommend that we stick with the mitigated negative declaration, or if we go to a full EIR. And in this case, because there's a zoning change involved, it will then go to City Council, and then they will also make that determination or not, and then we'll see where we stand. So that's an example, and that process is typical for all.
That is, but that 17th date, the planning commissioner who was here still has that as the meeting date.
Yeah, it's not. He doesn't know yet.
So he has they haven't told the planning commissioners that things have changed.
Well, they still have a meeting on June 17th.
Yeah, but they're supposed to, you know, they think they're going to be dealing with this at that time.
Oh, surprise, Jim. Sorry you're not here anymore. But no, because I have to, let me just disclose something, because this is why I know more than maybe the public knows, is I share a half mile of property line with the Offland parcel. So I'm literally the next door neighbor. I mean, there's a lot of people that share property lines, but I share the full property line with that parcel. So they sometimes share things with me that maybe they haven't told everybody else. And that's why I know that the June 17th meeting, what happened is, just one more piece of information, and then we've been here a while, we probably should start to think about breaking down, but that when they do this, the city has an obligation to send notices to the residents, but they also have an obligation to put a formal public notice in the back pages of the High Desert Star or Desert Trail, and the city never put their notice in for the hearing, and that is why the hearing isn't happening, and it has been postponed. Yes, there will be a hearing, but it will probably, they have to put, the way you know if there are these hearings happening is you know the classifieds in the back of the High Desert Star and the Desert Trail, you look there. That's where the hearing notices go. That tells you when the hearings are going to happen. Oh, Mike.
I'm just going to ask you my name is Tracy. I am also sharing property on Offland. Anyway, on the CEQA, to go through that and totally write it up, me being a resident, would that be something I can just go through, write what I feel, and submit it to the city council, beforehand?
Submit it to the city planner.
The planner.
Yeah,
okay.
It tells you
I just
there.
have no confidence in anything that we
Well,
have
no,
in 29.
and when you give your comments, try to make them as substantive as possible. I don't like it is not a comment.
Correct. It's going to affect me.
How?
How? That's how I need to write it.
That's right. You
I'm
have to have a
assuming.
substantive comment.
Okay.
Yeah, what happened is that when
It's Monday.
Yeah, it's not, no, the comments aren't due by June 2nd anymore. So the comments are now due by June 17th. I don't know where the June 2nd date came from exactly. It was something I was told, but the letter actually says that the comments are due the date of the hearing, and the hearing was June 17th. They cannot move that forward. So comments are due June 17th. And something anybody could do in this situation, and something that we will do as Indian Cove neighbors, is have a small community meeting for Indian Cove to talk about that mitigated negative declaration and help everybody through the process of trying to deal with writing comments on it. And I would encourage anybody that's facing this issue in their own neighborhood to do something similar. Just have a meeting like this. And we can have more of these big group meetings. It's, the challenge of having meetings like this isn't getting you all here. It's like finding a place that fits all of us, that's free. So that's really the challenge. Lots of hands. I'm going to go Atlas, then I know your name, but Janine, and then Anna.
I'll be quick. Talking about what we do want. If we do wanted to move forward with these discussions across our different valley towns, where would we start? What would you recommend as far as how did those towns connect? Did they have working groups? Did they just start here? I know that getting a meeting organized and getting insurance for a meeting space, which is something we have found with the Village Neighbors, is a challenge. Anyway, I had other questions, but I think that's a good way to wrap.
Super short answer is that I've heard a lot of different organizations across the Morongo Basin, getting representatives from those groups to come together, share what those groups have decided are shared interests, and deciding how to move forward with city entities respectively. So gather up and then disperse back to your more localized regions with a plan that represents a gathered agreement, essentially. And I think defining what you do want is the hardest part of this. It's where it's a lot more contentious than talking about what we don't want. So remembering that your shared goal is important, and acknowledging that you can't stop them from coming is what worked for Napa. There was, and I feel it here, the desire to not have people come, and acknowledging that that is not possible is a good way to move forward, I think. But yeah, coming up with a plan of advocacy and action and steps that you can encourage a city to take to make that happen is one. Small business loans and grants, pressuring to do that prevents larger businesses from taking vital retail space, for an example.
I just want to interrupt to say, at least MBCA, like I said, we're interested in all these issues. Get on our mailing list, go to the website, mbconservation.org. Our approximately monthly or twice a month e-blasts contain everything that's going on that we know about. And if you as a neighborhood group want to send us information, we'd be glad to get that out there.
Thank you, Lorraine. Janine?
Hi, I'm Janine. I live in Indian Cove. I was just wondering, and maybe this is a silly question, I don't usually go to these kinds of meetings, and anyway, I walk my dog down Sullivan Road, and I've seen the surveyors from Offland. I've never seen any surveying equipment. I've just seen them walking the land and looking around on the ground. Nobody's wearing any official clothing. I've not seen any official trucks. I'm just wondering if anybody has checked to see if the environmentalists, the surveyors, the people that are involved in doing this MND, if they actually are professionals, if they have certification, and if that's something, if that hasn't happened, if that would be something that would encourage the city to go ahead and do an EIR.
I can tell you that on the tortoise, on the biological, we've had two professionals in the field of tortoise studies look at that, and they don't feel that the people they used had proper certifications or that the study was up to current standards on the biological. So that's one way, is to find someone else in the field to look at the studies and evaluate whether or not they've been done to the best way they could be done. Thank you, Janine. Anna?
Anna Stum. I'm doing a very small development in 29 Palms, and my conditional use permit said that I had to do a cultural study, and that is looking for Native American artifacts under the ground. And when I hired the engineering firm, there's ways to do it with drones, but that only goes down a few inches. And for them to check under the ground for like to 8 feet, which is where artifacts could be, that ground had to be scraped. Mine was already scraped, but I do not understand how in any of these projects they're going to be able to check for cultural resources when everything would have to be scraped. That's something to bring up.
Let's get a second opinion on that. I think there's different. Your parcel is next to the Chemehueve burial ground, so you might have some special requirements that might not exist in other areas. But go ahead. Do you have a mic?
I don't know why you would have to scrape to do a cultural survey, because ordinarily that's not the case. I mean, they do cultural surveys in the park and in the Marine base and other places where the land is not scraped, and they would not scrape it in order to do the cultural resource survey, because that would damage all the other resources on the parcel. So right.
If there was any kind of burial ground on Offland or Lovemore or something, that's a way, that you could say, hey, you're not checking, really.
Well, there's professionals that do cultural resource surveys that on the landscape as it exists. So.
Yeah, no, and not that we should have seen it, but we have seen the cultural resource survey on Offland, and so we're actually aware of where the sites are in Offland. I can tell you, though, that it's not thorough, because I've found things myself, so I know what's there. But yeah, it's a challenge. It's a, you know, these surveys are always a challenge, and you know, people will have different levels of qualifications, and they cost different amounts of money, and that's a part of, I think, what goes into who gets chosen to perform these surveys. And theoretically, if the city runs an EIR, theoretically, those surveys would have standards they have to hit and perhaps be less biased, but we have no way of knowing that, and that's the big challenge. Anyway, we should really conclude this. This has been a great conversation. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Be sure to sign up on the various mailing lists so we can all get back in touch with you. And give yourselves a big hand. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much.